Okay, so I want to share a rather interesting experience that happened yesterday. Um, I haven't talked about this much because it can put a target on your back, but I figured it's a good educational moment and a good seed planting moment as I take some deep breaths here because I know as we age, our breath can be compromised. My father died of lung cancer. I'm thinking of him this weekend. I think a lot of people breathe shallowly because of stress and trauma and the after effects of such. But I do try to get out and ride my bike around, my trike, my e-trike. I love it. It's so much fun. And I swim and I walk and I keep, keep it moving. And I tried to rearrange my relationship with sugar because to me sugar is poison. It acts like cocaine in your brain. And the processed refined sugars, I just try not to do as much anymore. So, I'm getting healthier. Um, and an indication of that was I didn't lose my shit yesterday when this happened. So I work 3 or 4 days a week at a little local metaphysical shop. I am the reader. I am the psychic, mystic, oracle, healer person. I never self-identify as a witch. It's a heavy word for me. I don't like it. I don't care if anyone else wants to use it and reclaim it and feels good about that. That's not my, I don't judge that. But it's just not my word. So a couple of young people, 2 or 3 of them came in the shop and here and saw my, kind of little sign up. And I have a door open and just a little room where I do the reads. And I have a lot of word of mouth. That's basically how people find me. And I was excited recently to be invited to be the talent for an opera that's coming up in a local town here next season. So I guess the word is getting out that I do what I do, and I have repeat clients and people I've known for years, some I've known for decades who, have gotten sessions with me. And I know it's a loaded thing because, if you're Christian, divination is considered, away from God or sinful, but then they also do sort of sometimes admit that there are people with spiritual gifts out there. And so there's a lot of ambivalence and confusion and misinformation about what I do and who I am. So yesterday I had a chance to kind of hone and refine it for these evangelists that came into the shop. And I thought, well, first of all, interesting. What are you doing here? We tend to get more pagan, types or, it's very healthy here in Colorado. So you get people coming in who look like they just came off of a hike or are ready to go to the gym or something. It's very casual here. And, I tend to dress up a little more because I'm New England born and bred. And, not to say that there isn't a lot of casual fashion there, but there is a little more attention to some fashion. And I have my own signature style where I wear a lot of dresses. Now that I'm riding the bike, I'm wearing dresses and bike shorts and stuff. So anyway, I look like I could have been going to church, basically. But I'm the psychic in the back room and the medium and the mystic and the visionary, the clairvoyant, whatever. There's so many words for what we are. Fortune teller, palm reader. I don't do the palms. But, there's all kinds of people. I'm the Reiki practitioner, the master level teacher on that. Master is such a weird word. But anyway, so I've been doing this work for about 30 years. I'm now 55. I was always drawn to it when I was a kid. So people always ask me the same sort of 10 questions, and then Christians have another layer to it. So I'm going to try to answer those now for anyone who's curious or listening. I think I was always afraid to be judged or mocked because I was a lot, especially in New England. You get a lot of that. I don't believe in that shit. I believe in Jesus. And it's like, okay, well, good for you. So do I. And that was, something that came up in the conversation yesterday. But invariably, the major question I get is, how did you get into this? So I'll tell you that, and especially since it's Father's Day coming up. It is my belief and observation that my father was highly attuned and psychic. I think he would have preferred like people savvy or people skills, or that he was able to read people than the word psychic, but he had the gift. And, to the point where we could be sitting on the couch and the news would come on or something that was real time. It wasn't a rerun. It wasn't like a sitcom or anything. And he would be able to say what the newscaster was saying a beat ahead or in sync with them. It was a really weird experience, and sometimes even a little creepy, because it was like he would almost dissociate, stare off into space, which a lot of times psychics do, because we're getting what I call downloads and crownloads and messages and information. And so it does sometimes work like a little movie in your head, and then you're channeling, which people are like, how do you know you're not channeling demons? And it's like, well, you set the intention, you ask for the protection, and if you walk in truth and light, you're mostly going to get the positive messages. Sometimes you get the darker messages, and you learn to rebuke and send that on its way, because it's like the old cartoons where there's an angel on one shoulder and a demon on the other, and which wolf are you feeding? Which are you listening to, the angel or the demon? You're listening to the dark wolf or the light wolf. It's that kind of astral battle for our consciousness all the time. So anyway, I've always been fascinated by it since I was a kid. And when we would go to the fairs and the festivals, my dad would give me the $5 or the $10, and he would say, go see the lady. And the lady would be the fortune teller, the palm reader, the psychic, whoever was there. And they did tend to more dress the part, than with like turbans and hoop earrings and heavy eyeliner. Well, I like my eyeliner, but I tend to wear sundresses and flip-flops or sneakers, and like beachy style here in the mountains. It's kind of my own thing. So long story longer, he would give me the money, and then when I would come out of the reading, I mean, I'm talking like I was 8, 9, 10 years old when this was going on, and this was a very Catholic man, so this was open-minded of him, and I think he had his own curiosity about it. And then he would kind of grill me and interview me. How'd it go? What'd she say? How, what do you think? And I could tell he was like more invested in it than like, here, give your kid some money to go do something fun. It was like he was doing research through me. I only clocked out years later when I was like, why was he so into that? It's because he was trying to figure out his own gift and how it worked for him, and how I, expressed it, or how it would develop in me. And I really thank him for that, because I realized how unique that was, that he was able to do that, to support that. And now I am the lady, and so one time when I was in my 30s and I was doing this work, he said, I'm not surprised you're doing that. And I said, why? And he said, well, you were always interested in that. And I thought, yeah, I guess I was. And he didn't try to like steer me away from it. And a lot of times, people who are self-professed Christians think what I do is evil. They think that I'm messing with forces that are, beyond my scope. And that's a really ignorant take, in my opinion, because I did actually study metaphysics and world religions. And I did learn that there is a lot of overlap and a lot of similarities and congruencies in that. And I even took an awesome course in college called Spiritual Autobiography. And now that's a little bit of what I do too with my writer and editor hat. Is I have a business called literarylabor.com, and I call myself a book doula. So what I like to do with that is help people find their voice, shape their narrative, get their book prepped and ready for birthing into the world. I don't deal with the publishing side of it or the marketing side of it. I more help you with the, pregnancy and as you're getting ready to bring it forth. And I love that process. And I've done things like that since I can remember, even just helping my friend from Hungary, with her college papers back in the day. And then she became a newscaster for PBS. So, and then I taught English in Tokyo. So I'm a word nerd. I'm a grammar nerd. I love words. And I consider that I have something that I've heard called word magic. So I can just, bring through messages from the divine, and then people have to sift and sort and use their own discernment. And I always give a lot of disclaimers of, take this for what it is worth. If it resonates for you, if it lands for you, cool. If it doesn't, just let it go, because we're not, even the most accurate psychic is not 100% accurate, right? We also have our own filters, our own lenses, our own traumas, our own views, and we try to keep that to the side and just really bring through the information as neutral, in as neutral a fashion as we can. So I end up doing a lot of education, because people are very curious, and I understand that. But then at that point, it's kind of like, well, sit down and have a reading with me, and I will be happy to answer all your questions. So it happened a little bit yesterday, where one young woman, she was about 22, they're both about 22, came in and was like right up to the sign in the door and said, oh, well, I've never met a psychic before. And She goes, I'm Christian. I said, that's good for you. I also love Jesus. And her eyes got big and she was so confused. And, I said he was the OG energy healer. He was the miracle maker. He's the way, the truth, and the life. So I know, their talking points, and I know how to adjust my language. If I'm talking to a Buddhist, I'm going to talk about the Eightfold Path and moderation in the middle way. If I'm speaking to a Muslim or someone who is more in the Islam tradition, I understand why they move away from alcohol and why they do some fasting and, so on and on and on. I understand from deep study and deep respect of other people's cultures, traditions, the way they worship, because I immersed myself in this metaphysical realm. And often it gets dismissed as New Age when it's really very ancient traditions we're talking about here, and there's a thread that weaves through it all, which is that we are all looking for meaning. Whether you're into science or spirituality, you're looking for meaning, and you're looking for what is my path and my purpose. And so I often joke that I'm a life coach with tarot cards, and I don't have any negativity or feeling against tarot cards. I think they're just a prop, they're a tool. The artwork is very interesting to decode, it's very symbolic. So to me, if you're sitting down reading a children's book about the Bible or decoding tarot cards, they're just ways to try to tap into the divine and understand it more deeply and understand yourself more deeply. So those who are very, very into the Bible, so the second woman came along after the first one. I kind of shut her down after a few questions because I could tell she was more in judgment than curiosity. And I don't play with that anymore. I just don't. Because I've heard, again, too many people. Like one of my best reads, I will say this, was this burly, bald, Mr. Clean looking guy at a party. I do backyard summer parties sometimes, and that's fun because I get to wear my bathing suit and my sundress and take a dip, have some food, and then do some readings, and it's very casual and fun. And I've even done some for the military, military kids who were graduating on the base, and they would go to the bowling alley and the roller rink and the pool. And I was at the bowling alley doing readings, and it was so loud, and that was a hard one. But they all gather around, and you're kind of just informing them about different archetypes. Or I do like the zodiac. I'm not that deeply into astrology, but I like to look at someone's core element and see if they resonate to their dynamic with, say, their friends or family. So I'm a fire sign, I'm Aries, and I can be feisty, and I can be very passionate, and I can be childlike, because I think of an Aries as the child of the zodiac who is I'll do it, me first, I'll try it. And we're very, we'll take on a risk, we'll take on a challenge, and we're very action oriented, and yet we can also be the sage, the wise one, the one who, brings through information that sounds like you're 500 years old, or you could be 5. So we don't always have the best or easiest time with people because they don't know how to take us, and they can be really threatened by the fire. You can either come warm yourself by my fire if you treat me right, or, I can be a volcano and a forest fire and burn down your village if you're mistreating me. That's how that works. So it's just literally you want to play with fire, or you want to learn how to be a fire keeper, a fire tender, like they do in the indigenous culture, and, learning how to keep it in the campfire zone, in the sweet spot, rather than the burnout zone. I always say when we're flickering, we're a little tea light. We still are warm and light, but we're not lighting up the room like when we're in a kumbaya campfire space. And that's when someone's strumming the guitar and you're out under the stars with a group of people you love, and someone's telling stories, and it's just very cozy. That's where Aries, or fire signs in general want to be, is in the campfire cozy. The campfire cozy kumbaya. We do not want to be in volcano or forest fire. We will give you a lot of chances. But then when we're done. And the fire is all the way out, and the bridge is all the way burned, because some bridges absolutely need to be burned, especially if they're rickety, they're rotten, and they're going nowhere, right? So I will look at the people's elements, and if you're an air, for example, I have Libra moon, Libra rising. I don't know the rest of my chart that well. I know I have a Pisces and Venus or something, so that's a sensitivity thing. I call it big fish feelings. Water signs are very emotion-based. Fire signs are action-based. And air signs are very intellectual. So they live in their head a lot. They overthink stuff. They kind of ruin things by overthinking sometimes. I have 2/3 Libra, right? So I understand Libras. We're into beauty. We're into balance. We're into fairness, right? And, Libra in shadow is sort of flaky and unreliable and hot and cold and wishy-washy, right? So I can understand those sides to myself. I say don't take a Libra, for example, to the Cheesecake Factory. They're never going to make a decision. They're going to have FOMO, and they're going to sit there and be overwhelmed. And Libras lean into their charm more than their diplomacy more than their authenticity. So that's where I lead with the Aries, which is very sun, solar, masculine kind of sign. So anyway, these are just, they're just ways to see parts of your personality, and your personality is not your soul. That's a whole other journey, and that's what the journey of metaphysics has been for me, is an intimate journey of the soul and a walk with the divine. So back to the evangelist kids. They came in, I think they were just curious. They're on their mission. They're going around and all kinds of things. And so the first one, like I said, I kind of shut her down because her vibe was a little off for me. And then the second one was asking good questions. So we dialogued for a good 10 or 15 minutes. And it was fascinating because, we really actually came to a mutual respect. I said, I think a lot of Christians would say what I'm doing is messing with things I shouldn't be messing with. And I said, I don't mess with like Ouija boards, for example. I just don't do that. But I will go and do house clearings. If people have had a lot of activity or what people might call paranormal or superstition, Christians might say double-minded or lukewarm because you can't serve two masters. Well, I don't serve anyone. I don't serve myself or God. I serve, the light and the love forces, that don't even have a label and don't even have a form. Maybe angelic and celestial if you want to go there. But I'm very intimate and familiar with how the demonic rolls, and I know how to mirror it, and I know how to deflect it, and I know how not to get sucked in by it or be fooled by it, right? But that wasn't always the case. That's been the last decade. I've gotten as I say, a crash course in evil through learning about the Illuminati and the so-called elites, the A-listers, who I call the assholes. A for asshole. But so we got talking about Jesus and how he, walked in the world. And I said, I also do believe he had a partner. I believe he had a divine complement partner in Mary Magdalene, and she was very maligned by the church and treated as a prostitute rather than a teacher and a healer and a gift to the planet. And now she's known as the disciple of disciples. And I said, I also really feel the Catholic Church is one of the most evil entities there is, and very pro-pedophilia. And that, I know some of the Catholics who are still staunch and still in the church are able to compartmentalize, and they don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and they like the fellowship, and they like the community, and the singing, and I get, all that. I really do. But I know too much about Freemasons, and I know too much about the Illuminati, and I know too much about the Catholic Church and the Pope, and how the priests were bending over the little boys and sticking crucifixes up their butts, So, and that was okay. That was considered more than okay. That was considered, completely fine, and was covered up, and only came out because too many survivors, were vocal and had similar stories. So I don't want anything to do with the Catholic Church, just like I don't want anything to do with Ouija boards. To me, there's a lot of evil there, and a lot of ignorance. Okay, so, and I grew up Catholic, and I went to Catholic skirt, and I wore the plaid skirts, and the nuns, and the whole deal. So, am I a witch? No, absolutely not. Like I said, I don't resonate to that word, even though I grew up in Massachusetts. You go to Salem, and, I went to Salem for a field trip when I was a kid, probably 6th grade or something. And I felt nauseous and dizzy there from the energy. So I am also an empath. That's a word that I resonate to. And I never heard that word until about, 20 years ago, 22 years ago, when I had my breakthrough suicide attempt and hospitalization from long-term depression that kind of caught up with me. And then now I believe that ideation is a demonic program of oppression, and it's called Omega programming in the Mason world. And they want you to kill yourself, and they take bets on it, and it's really vile and disgusting. So, yeah, where was I going with that? I don't know. Rambly. But yeah, I just feel like, yeah, I got really sick when I went to Salem. I just felt like the vibes there were off. So I'm very into vibes, but I'm not into good vibes only. I'm into real. I'm into authentic. I'm into what's really arising in the moment. How do we either sit with it, transmute it, or move on or heal from it? I think it's absolutely dangerous and harmful to try to push people into positivity who are trying to deal with their traumas of either molestation, rape, incest, or, the rampant satanic ritual stuff. Like, we're coming up on solstice. It's a big time in the Luciferian realm where they do a lot of ritual and they do harm children and they do drink blood, and that is real. And I'm vindicated and validated that all information is finally coming out just a little bit in the mainstream, just the surface. Like, we haven't even, like, the tip of the iceberg, the Titanic iceberg on that. But I know way more than I would care to, and my early seeking and journey brought me to now being, still a lifelong seeker and student, but also a teacher and educator on these topics, because now I'm at a certain level of comfort and, I will say, mastery, just like someone could master the guitar, right? So, this was a wake-up call for me that I don't care to engage with people who want to just dismiss or judge and then pretend they love everybody. I don't care if you call yourself Christian, but you talk the talk and you know how to quote every Bible passage, but you don't know how to actually go and work in a soup kitchen or help the homeless or, visit people in the nursing home or do kind, acts of, faith is dead without works, right? Without acts. So I like curiosity, and I'm always open to questions, especially if I feel they will help someone maybe get a new, fresh perspective on something that they didn't think about before. I love that myself when something sparks or ignites or inspires that in me. But I think I am, and I'm not saying this in a victim way, just in a very matter-of-fact way. I think I am very misunderstood for who I am and what I do, and it's very hard for people to grasp it or to respect it. However, I have found here in Colorado there is a lot more open-mindedness and a lot more curiosity, that comes from the heart rather than from trying to debunk someone or, mislabel or misdiagnose or misunderstand or misconstrue them, and or harvest and attack and manipulate or extract from someone because they have a certain energy. One of the nice compliments I get and the feedback I get all the time is, I love your energy. I just love your energy. And it's like, yeah, well, I work at that. That is a job. That is basically a full-time job, is to keep your energy in a good place. That doesn't mean I don't get pissy or bitchy or say nasty things, especially about pedophiles. That's a thorn in my side, and I cannot stand them. I don't want to carry hate in my heart towards anyone, and I understand everybody's wounded and hurt people, and I get that. But I've been so heavily targeted, and they do go after psychics and people with spiritual gifts, and they want to test, vet, and break you, or turn you into an asset. So think of it like the Sorting Hat from Harry Potter. They want to see what house you belong to, what your skills and gifts are. And there's a lot of observation and a lot of surveillance and a lot of gaslighting and gang stalking and everything that happens to people who do what I do. And that does not mean that we aren't also under complete divine protection by, say, Jesus or the saints or the angels or whoever is looking out for us, while that demonic force moves through the people who are compromised. Some of the things that compromise people are drugs and alcohol, for example, big ones. Believe it or not, sugar. Sugar is a big compromise. It raises you and drops you and raises you and drops you and raises you and drops you. And I have a personal theory, just an opinion, not a medical professional, that that's what diabetes really is an addiction to sugar. And so then that's also what I think they call bipolar is an addiction to sugar. And does that mean never have a cupcake ever again? No, but try to reach for better sugars, the non-refined ones, the ones that will not invite. I really believe there are sugar entities, and they're close to the alcohol entities, and they feed on your energy surges and drops. They feed on your emotions, both the dark ones and the performative. I'm just so positive. I just want good vibes only. They feed on your inauthenticity with that. They feed on you. So we'd be better off not to be doing sugar or alcohol or substances of any kind. I'm in a 420 friendly place. I think plant medicine has its own, goodness. I actually think if it's a plant and it grew from the earth, there's something pure and beautiful about that, but also that can be tainted and that can be hijacked and that can be misused and abused, right? Whew, deep breath. So that's me in a nutshell. Emphasis on nut. And I just don't want to be with someone who is a performative Christian who doesn't live the message, or who would judge me for what I do or dismiss me or mock me or try to mimic me or copycat me. I don't want anything to do with anybody like that, whether you worship Lucifer or whether you worship Christ. I feel I'm a human, I'm a person, I'm a woman, and I deserve respect. I'm not, some circus freak show just because I have these, gifts, or they're not party tricks. I'm not a con artist, and I'm not a charlatan. I'm not fake. I'm the real deal, as people tell me over and over and over and over. I mean, I questioned it. I mean, you do get in like imposter syndrome, you do get in doubt, you do get in fear. But now after 30 years of doing this, and people coming back to me and saying everything you said came true, and everything you said came true, and everything you said came true, I'm blown away by that. I'm humbled by that. And I'm also proud of that. And so that's a mixed bag, right? Because they say pride comes before a fall. And I get what they mean by that. They mean spiritual arrogance and not being in your humility. My humility, is I'm grateful for these gifts. I'm grateful I get to do the work I get to do. I'm grateful people come and sit and chat with me and leave feeling better. I'm grateful that I get to do that and be paid for it. And, then there's the other argument that, well, you shouldn't charge for spiritual, gifts. Well, I still have a light bill to pay. I still have clothes to put on my back and food to put in my belly. I still have to make a living and make a life. And people pay me for my time and my energy and my expertise, just like you would pay anybody who has studied a subject for 30 years. When people come in and say, is it free? Is it free? No. Do you work for free? Do you pay your mechanic? Do you pay your doctor? These are people who study to do what they do. I am a professional. I am good at it and I enjoy it. Okay. And that's taken me so long to be able to own that and feel good about it. And I have had my mental health challenges. And I think a lot of psychics and mystics and awakening healers do. They have psychosis. They have what people would call schizophrenia or bipolar or OCD or ADHD or autism. I think those diagnoses, for me personally, are bullshit. I rebuke them all. If a diagnosis helps you understand yourself better, go for it. If you need medicine as a crutch for a while you're healing through horrible things you've been through, go for it. Been there, done that. No judgment on that, but it's not for me. Labels and misdiagnoses are people who don't understand and who are judgmental more than curious, and I want nothing to do with that. I don't care what you call yourself or who you worship. If you go to the rituals in the caverns and you hurt children, or if you go to church on Sunday, some people are doing both, So that's me, like I said, in a nutshell. And there's a lot more to me. There are many other layers. I'm a multidimensional being, and I am not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. I don't need you to believe. That's what you'd be like, well, I don't believe in that. Well, I don't need you to. I didn't ask you to. I'm just here doing my thing, offering what I can, show up, be used by the divine in the right ways, and for the highest and best good of all, because that's the intention I always put out there for every session I do with anyone. The majority of my clients, if I'm honest, over 30 years have been women trying to get out of bad marriages to abusive men, to alcoholics, to men who financially abuse and oppress them and their children, who physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually abuse them, and for them to stand strong. And I've had my own lessons and tests in those arenas. So again, I can be proud of that work. And you're breaking up families. Blah, blah, blah. No, I'm breaking up false families, because what God puts together may no man or woman put asunder, right? But if these are not really truly God ordained unions, and I do not believe in a God who would want a woman to be beaten or cheated on, or mistreated, or called a cunt in front of her kids. Like, I don't believe in that. I believe in divorce then, in that case, and I believe in a God-ordained divorce and spiritual divorce, and getting away from those soul ties and breaking those, and doing cord cuttings if you have to. So whatever your belief system is, and if it's the Bible for you, great. If it's hurting children, not great. Okay. But I have studied these things in depth, at length, since I was a child. So I'm happy to educate. I think it's important to plant those seeds and help people have mind shifts and get brave and get strong and get gone if you're being mistreated or ignored or mishandled in any way. I believe that should not happen in any relationship, whether you're male or a female, whether you're old or young. I do not believe in that, and I do not believe that's what God would want. Okay, so I'm just the voice of hopefully kindness and reason, but sometimes some tough love and some bluntness, and whoever comes to me is ready and sits in my chair, the chair across from me is ready and pays me for that conversation, and I will never feel guilty about being compensated for my time and my energy, because there are plenty of people who never did and never would, because they're cheap and they're crazy and they're evil and they just want to treat me like a bug under glass that they want to study so they can see how they can hurt me. And I will not roll over for that anymore. I did it for too long and I won't do it. So there you go. That's a very long-winded self-testimony here, because people are always asking me those same questions. How did you get into this? How does it work for you? Do you think it's evil? And those are my answers. Much love.